Frank King is a suicide prevention specialist. He's a speaker. He's a comedian. He's an author. He's a bodybuilder and a TEDx speaker as well. Very impressive man. He struggles with chronic suicide and depression himself. He discovered it when he was in college, and he's able to turn it around and help others now. His TEDx, he did 5 of them, are all excellent, all on mental illness as a topic, and how he brings comedy to it. And he speaks publicly. He also speaks to corporations. He helps many thousands of people deal with this. It's a really, really pervasive issue here in our country and throughout the world. But he's very inspirational. The way he's dealt with it, his parents, his generations before had it, how he found his great aunt and his grandmother had it as well, and how he's able to deal with it and turn it all around. He worked for Jay Leno, of course, the Tonight Show for 20 years, but he's got great anecdotes and very entertaining, great speaker, and you're going to love this conversation. Suicide prevention. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Thanks so much. I'm a big fan. I really enjoy your work. Yeah, also putting it on the golf club, putting it on the driver is not only illegal, but it actually helps the non-spin.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's against the golf rules to put.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah, that's practice equipment. Yeah, not during play. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you, Frank, what did you notice first? Did you notice the we're going to talk about mental illness, the kind of traits that you have or the comedy as you were young. What did you notice first?
Well, I didn't actually get depressed until my freshman year in college. So comedy
Mm,
definitely came first. I told my first joke in fourth grade, and the kids laughed. The teacher was hysterical. So I said to myself, I'm going to do this for a living. Which, in fourth grade, not a lot of kids, I mean, some do, some know.
right.
And then 12th grade, they had a talent show. And so I thought, nobody had ever done stand up before. I thought, well, I'm going to break that glass ceiling. And, and I won the talent show, and that cemented my, I'm going to be a stand up comedian. But although my mother made me go to college, I'll tell you the story if you ask me. Well,
Please.
what'd your folks think about that? Oh, well, my mom had
Yeah.
very strong feelings about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't think that's the case. The rush of making others laugh, especially as a youth, is such a rush, and you just kind of caught that and you wanted to continue with it.
Yeah, and it just felt right. And then, intuition wise, and then I'll tell you about my first 5 minutes on stage at the Comedy Store in San Diego. What happened?
Please.
What the thought that occurred to me right in the middle of the act. I wasn't pausing; it just popped into my head while I'm telling a joke. So, and that's when I began in earnest to, to figure out how I was going to make a living at it. And
Very
had I
interesting.
known, Joe, had I known how difficult it was, um, I thought about doing a what do you call it? A keynote called "What Would You Do If You Didn't Know No Better?" Because
Mm.
I didn't know any better. I didn't know how. I mean, how difficult making it's a good part time job, but full time for your meals, for your health insurance, for your wife,
Your family. Very difficult.
big difference.
So you say the first time you realized you had depression was in college. So you never experienced it before then?
No, I didn't. And a lot of kids, have trouble in high school. I loved high school. I almost stayed an extra year. I liked it so much.
Mm. Mm.
Was going to take trig again because I sucked at it. Typing, which I wish I had now, so that
Mm.
everything is like this. No, and I didn't know it was depression. My high school sweetheart went to the University of Arizona. I went to Carolina, which are 2,000 miles apart. I just thought
Mm.
I was lovesick, heartsick, lonely. But looking back at the symptoms I had, I thought, you know what? I think that was when my depression kicked off. And it runs in my
Hmm.
family. We can talk about that. It's called generational depression and suicide. So I was hardwired for it to start with.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking the story you tell about, meeting, finding your aunt
Oh
and
yeah. Although that
yeah.
heartbreaking, that little 5 minute piece got me my first TEDx because I actually flew up to Vancouver, BC to audition live. I wanted them to hear
Wow.
it from me in person. They were
Mm.
just
Right. Yeah, your TEDx's are very, very, very impressive and very, magnetic. You can't take your eyes or ears, off them.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. So the suicide, you didn't notice that trait until you were when? Depression, you say around college.
Yep. And then uh, around college, and I didn't know it was depression. And even after I finished college and married my high school sweetheart, I noticed that around 5 in the afternoon, I would get down. I thought maybe just my biorhythms bottoming out. I mean, I could
Mm,
tell you without a watch when it was getting within 4 or 5 minutes of 5 o'clock because, um, but I didn't
hmm,
have thoughts of suicide until several years into my marriage. I can remember the day and time and place it happened.
really?
And yeah, because it was brand new. It came unbidden. A friend of mine said it's like one of those planes that tows a banner. They just kind of went across your, or you
Right.
could just kill yourself. What? Yeah, and I can tell you the story of, and that actually was the genesis of my fourth TEDx talk, "Suicide: The Secret of My Success." Dead man talking, because it was at that moment I realized I need to make some changes, or I'm going to kill myself.
You always kinda have suicide as an option for a
Oh,
solution for a particular problem.
still do,
To
still
what
do.
extent? Like, when's the last time you entertained it?
What time is it?
Ah,
Not quite that.
so
Not
you're
not quite that often.
okay. So my hard drive is full, maybe I should kill myself. I mean, is it that pervasive?
Yeah, it could be that. Ask because I've got a story that I tell every keynote I give about. I say, look, as a solution for people in my tribe, as a solution for problems large and small, and then I detail a small one,
Your
which is
car.
going to sound ridiculous, but
Yeah.
there's a story attached to that because every time I tell that story, there's at least one person in the audience who has chronic suicidal ideation and they had no idea it had a name. And the relief is palpable. But it's a good story.
Please tell me.
Okay. Well, I say, look, when I say small, solution, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had three thoughts on bid. Get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself. And I say to the audience, I know that sounds absurd, but get this. Every speech I've given, except for one since 2014, there's been at least one person in the audience, sometimes more, who have chronic suicidal ideation. They have no idea it has a name. They don't know it's a thing. They think they're just some kind of freak and completely alone. I did a college presentation. Young woman comes up afterwards. She says, "Thanks for your keynote." I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." How did it make
Mm,
you weep? She said, "Well, you know your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, kill yourself? I've been having those thoughts all my life." I had no idea it had a name. I just thought I was some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I'm not in fact alone, and I wept. There's a little ROI.
Yeah,
And it's
incredible.
happened over and over and over. I feel like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. Like I've been shown what these people's lives would be like if I weren't there simply to reassure them it's a thing.
So you believe so your family had this and they actually chose that solution in more than one case.
Yes, my grandmother and then my great aunt. My great aunt's was I think she had glaucoma. And she was of a generation where didn't want to be a burden on anybody. Even though my mother was constructing a great aunt flat at the end of our
Mm,
house in a spare room, getting ready to plumb it for the bathroom, she would have been delighted to take her in. But that predisposition and that generation and losing her eyesight, and I think my mother did so slowly with cigarettes and alcohol after my dad died,
mm,
and I came, as you know, close enough I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Therein
sure.
lies the tale. And yeah, so
And you
it just it's like Muzak in a grocery store. Sometimes you don't notice it, sometimes you do. That's kind of how the suicidality is.
uh. And you mentioned Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams and how they most likely had it, but they both denied it, correct?
Yes, both self-medicated. I suspect. Well, we know Robin self-medicated, and we know
Mm.
Bourdain did, and so did Kate Spade.
Kate Spade, yeah.
And I have a theory on that, sort of in terms of entrepreneurs. Going out on your own like that, taking a chance,
Mm,
rolling the dice on starting your own fashion line, even though you're like head of a department at Vanity Fair. You're going to
right.
give that up and try your own. And Anthony Bourdain was in college, making good grades at Vassar, on his way to a good career in something. And I think he thought, I don't belong here. I belong in culinary. Screw this. I suspect he said to himself, if I stay at Vassar, I'm going to kill myself if I don't pursue my dream. Because I thought I was the only one who ever had that, if I don't pursue my dream, I'm going to kill myself sooner rather than later. And I've discovered half a dozen people that I've met who have the very same thought process. As look, I this is not my life. These are not the people I should be spending time with. I should be over there doing that. And if I don't, I'm going to kill myself. So what the hell?
Mm.
I could try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself.
And you feel that all these people regretted it or were before it happened, they didn't really wanna do it.
No, a lot of people. A misconception is that they wanted to die. And
Right.
suicide most often is not about wanting to die. I didn't want to die. Suicide is about ending the pain.
Mm,
Same thing as substance abuse disorder, alcoholism, drug addiction. You're just trying to end the pain temporarily. Of course, I just saw it on my news feed that 100,000 people died of overdoses last year, drug overdoses. The catch is we don't know, was it an accidental overdose or was it an on purpose overdose? And with oxy, it's really hard to, and fentanyl and all, it's really hard to tell if they just made a mistake, got the
right.
wrong batch of heroin that had too much fentanyl in it. And
Mm, horrible. Absolutely horrible. I don't know if you know Chris Parker Howard, he's got a great podcast, he calls it Coffee Over Suicide.
oh man, I need to
Uh,
be on his show.
you do, because he's in your tribe, and, I'll be happy to send you information, but every
Yeah.
morning, instead of suicide, he drinks coffee.
Well, that's
Look at you.
well, and
Yeah.
and I
You're
I take a little antidepressant, but I also
uh
have something. I have something called excessive daytime sleepiness, where I get really sleepy even in the morning after a cup of coffee, and it's dangerous when I get behind the wheel. And
Mm,
so I take modafinil, Provigil, but I only do it if A, I'm going to be driving, or B, I woke up this morning, second day in a row, depressed, and I thought, you know what? After I get up from my first meditation or nap, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee and then modafinil, and it makes a big difference. I don't know if you've ever had
really?
modafinil, but here's how this popped into my head the other day. It doesn't make you work faster, your brain work faster. It slows the world down, so
Huh.
you feel like you're gaining on the world, on whatever it is you're trying to do. Yeah, it's amazing, but I only take it as needed because I found that if I took it every day, it kind of waned the effectiveness. is. But if I take it
Right.
when I really do need it, then like I'm going to be a sparkling guest because I just have a daffodil.
I see. And let's continue on medication. Is there other medication for the other ailments?
For depression, yes, I take Wellbutrin. I just got lucky that the first thing my doctor prescribed for me worked. A
Hmm.
lot of people with psychotropics, a third of the people who are taking something love it. A third, it's okay. The other third, it's just horrible. They got to get off.
Wow.
There's now a DNA cheek swab test for psychotropics where they try to match your DNA with a couple of antidepressants that work well with your metabolism. It's called precision medicine. There's half a dozen companies on the web that do it. It's a couple $100, but well worth it if your stuff's not working.
Right.
So yeah, there is no medication for chronic suicidal ideation. As a matter of fact, I met a woman at a college. She came up afterwards. She goes, Frank, I got a question for you. Can you have chronic suicidal ideation and not depression?
Hmm.
I thought, you know what? I believe you could because the thoughts of suicide for me don't always happen when I'm depressed. I've been suicidal at some of the best times in my life. So there's
Wow.
not necessarily a direct link between the two. Now, if I get really depressed, I can have a thought like that. But I've been on top of the world and wretchedly depressed. It's like a wheel. It's
Mm.
got a flat spot every now and then it comes around. So,
Absolutely fascinating. And what can we do? What can others do to help your tribe?
well, we'll go over things. We'll go over signs and symptoms, if you like, signs and symptoms of depression and thoughts of
Hmm.
suicide. And here's why: 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. They can't make up their mind. 8 out of 10. 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt, which
Hmm.
means the vast majority of people want to be saved. The trick is, how do you know? How do you recognize the hints? What are you listening for? What are you looking for with depression, thoughts, and suicide? So when I do my keynotes, that's the heart and soul of my keynote is teaching. Here's the signs. Now, here's what you don't say. Here's what you do say. Here's what you don't do.
Mm.
Here's what you do, and how to find resources. So that I can instruct people on what to do if a loved one is struggling. And when I
Yeah,
speak, part of the keynote is for the normal people, neurotypicals, to teach them that. And part of it, of course, is for the mentally ill who may not be aware of some of this, you know, self-care plan, this and that.
that's interesting. The ones that are afflicted with it may not know about it, may not know they're giving off signs.
Well,
Is that
and
what you're suggesting?
yes, and especially during the pandemic, I created a keynote March of 2020, early in the pandemic, called Social Distancing and Staying Sane. Don't worry so much about your mentally ill friends. Because
Hmm.
everybody knows mentally ill and high functioning has a self-care plan. We wake up in an uncertain world every day, pandemic or not. So we have to figure out a way to get out of bed. And so I did a goodly number of podcasts and keynotes for money teaching neurotypical people how to create a self-care plan. Because
Wow.
how would you, if you've never been depressed, how would you know it's depression? How would you
Hmm.
know why you can't get out of bed? Well, if you've never been clinically depressed. So I think everybody should have a self-care plan because this is the first pandemic. I have a feeling it ain't the last.
Mm. So if somebody feels sense of depression, they think they may have it, they're not sure, they should go and get diagnosed,
Yeah,
correct?
I get a mental health checkup. If you work for a company, they have something called an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and they have mental health benefits. And thanks to Obamacare, which is not perfect, but it created parity between mental and physical benefits insurance wise.
Hmm.
I would also get a physical because I met a woman just last week in Montana when I spoke to the Farm Bureau. She years ago she went to see her doctor. She's now a grandmother, but when she was a mother and had 3 kids, she went to see her doctor and said, "I think I'm depressed." And he said, "Well, you have three little reasons to be depressed." Great diagnosis. Well,
Hmm.
her husband refused to accept that. They got a second opinion. She was having thyroid problems. She was not, in fact, clinically depressed. It was her
Interesting.
thyroid was malfunctioning, and that was making her depressed. So when they put her on thyroid medication, boom, gone. So I
Wow.
say get a mental health checkup from a professional and have a physical. Make sure it's not a physical ailment manifesting as mental symptoms.
Mm. We hear constantly we often hear about celebrities with mental health issues and
Mhm.
how it's such a serious issue, and we really don't talk about it that much. I think it helps that some celebrities are talking about it a little bit more, and perhaps it'll permeate a bit. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that it's justified? They're using it as an excuse? Do you like when you hear things like that?
Yes, because more and more celebrities, athletes are coming out. The one
Mm.
young woman in Tokyo, the gymnast.
Oh yes, by Simone Biles.
Yes, she was very forthright about her mental, and she stopped
Yes,
competing specifically for her mental health.
on the world's largest stage.
Yes,
Yes.
in events she'd worked for her entire
Yes.
lifetime,
Yes.
and she said, it was what they call it, the curlies or the when you're in the air. A great gymnast knows exactly their body position, whether it's upside down, sideways, and she was worried that somehow what she was feeling would interfere with that system. And
Mm,
if you're if you're in the middle of like three somersaults or something in midair, you got to know what's coming
that's right.
next, or you could get seriously injured. So no, and I did a whole TEDx talk called "Mental with Benefits: The Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness" for the very reason you're saying. I kept bumping into people who were mentally ill, but they had some superpower, practically actors, writers, singers, comics, and so I thought it can't be a coincidence, and it's the same brain. So I believe that mental illness is actually a combination of mental illness and mental ableness. I believe that I was made this way. I think my depression and thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my creativity, imagination. And by the way, 60 Minutes did a story in 2019, 2 years after my TED talk, on how 30 Fortune 500 companies are actively recruiting people on the autism spectrum for their one singular amazing ability.
Hmm,
So I have a feeling that, because it's all the same wiring. I can teach you to write stand up and perform stand up. I cannot teach you to process the incoming information
right.
the way and at the speed for comedy my brain does. I mean, people ask me, how'd you come up with that heckler line? You know what? I didn't think it. I just said it. I have no idea where it came from.
Right. That was fascinating, that TED Talk, because your thesis was you're not disadvantaged, you're advantaged.
Yes, or other abled, either way.
Yeah, other abled. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I watched 4 of your TED Talks
Oh, dear God, man, I'm
and
sorry.
well, I spaced them out. They were excellent. Born to be Funny, the mental health comedian. Uh, that I don't think that was your first.
No, that was actually, I did my first A Matter of Laugh or Death.
Matter of Life or Death.
That's
That's
where I
right.
tell the story of my grandmother, my great aunt.
Yeah,
Well, Joe, from that, two events called me. The one you just mentioned in Scarsdale, New York,
right.
and then another one. And they said, do you have any more mental health topics? And I said, yeah. So they signed me up. The Scarsdale thing, Scarsdale, you probably know, is a very rich area.
Sure.
They wanted to impress upon the kids that life's not all about money and being a hedge fund manager. Nietzsche said, what is a life of means without meaning? Which I included in
Hmm.
my talk. So what I talked to them about was, my becoming a comedian, how that happened, and then how I became a speaker, because comedian's good, but speaker is making a living and a difference.
Mm.
So you want to make a living as a hedge fund manager, okay, but you also want to make a difference, because that's a much fuller life. So that was the genesis, and they wanted the kids to get that idea that it's not all about money.
Very interesting. And I love, and even a book was forthcoming.
For me, we're working on the fourth book in a 4-book series on men's mental health. The three of them are already up on Amazon,
Right.
and one of them, if you go to the mental health comedian, or as we say down south, Joe, the mental health comedian, uh, there's an MP3 download of the audiobook unabridged, and I narrate it, so you can have it for free.
Oh, well worth it. And so then, so interesting. So you started talking, you had these TED Talks that spurred, these engagements, and then you have other TED Talks. You talk about suicide, the secret of my success, Dead Man Talking. Great, great title.
Thank you. Well, and as a TEDx coach, that's one of the things I bring to the table that the bigger companies don't,
Hmm.
because they're really good at gathering the information. I meet with my clients once a week for an hour on Zoom. The bigger companies meet you once, one on one, and then group Zoom, and then fill out forms. And but they don't do a lot of creative work on the answers to the questions on the TEDx applications. Now think about this: if you're on the committee to select speakers and you get 200 applications, whatever you put in those first couple of boxes better attract their attention.
Hmm.
And suicide: the secret of my success, dead man talking. Well, suicide: the secret of my success is counterintuitive. Dead man talking sounds like the book and the movie, Dead Man Walking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They call me up and I said, am I going to audition? They go, no, you're on.
Hmm.
So if you, and the same thing happened on the next one. Title and subtitle good enough. I didn't just make it into the audition pile. I skipped the audition. So that's one of the things I do for my clients is we make sure it's really sticky marketing wise. It's a marketing pitch basically.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You got to grab them right away.
and my pricing is the same as the big companies, but I like to think that I give a lot more individual attention and then that creative element. Having written for Leno for 20 years and been a comic for 35, and being crazy doesn't hurt.
Well, it's an advantage.
It is an advantage. Here's how. I love creating taglines for
Hmm.
people, and my process is I ask myself before I go to sleep. Okay, I want a tagline for Anthony Metten, and Anthony teaches communication, emotional intelligence, and individuation, what they call soft skills in business.
Sure.
So I put that in my head. I go to sleep. Next morning at 3 a.m., I wake up, grab my iPhone, I text Anthony. Anthony Metten, soft skills, concrete results.
Hmm.
I get a text right back. First of all, you woke me up, you bastard. And second, did you think of that in your sleep? Yep, pretty much that's the way my brain works. So yeah, it's
Very
I've
interesting.
got a friend who was on Madison Avenue for 20 years, worked for Frito and the NFL and did commercials. And she was doing something I can't remember. She was pitching herself to go to work for a company, not as on site, but as a contractor. Doing. So she said, I need a tagline or two, Frank." So within 24 hours, I had half a dozen. And she wrote back and she goes, I was on Madison Avenue 20 years. I've never seen anybody who could do this good of work this fast. Well, again,
Interesting.
it's my, you haven't been talking to the right crazy people.
Right from the mad woman. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, um, so we have, so you go to college, you find that you're depressed. Do you actually get diagnosed?
No, I've never been actually diagnosed. I'm self-diagnosed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, people ask me, "How do you know you're suicidal?" The taste of gunmetal was a big tip-off.
Yeah.
Well, given my family history, and I've got a
Mm,
friend who went to Carolina, majored in psychology, and we talked about the symptoms and the triggers, and he goes, "Oh man, I mean, I'm not a clinician, but." And yeah, the suicidality. I mean, having thoughts like
yeah.
driving down the highway, I see a bridge abutment ahead. I think to myself randomly, if I turn the wheel a little bit, hit the bridge abutment, done. That's a very
Mm,
common suicidal thought among people like me. Where you're driving a mountain
mm,
road, you look down, it drops off. I would do it.
sure.
So yeah, so it's I've got the classic
Mm.
symptoms. The thing is, chronic suicidal ideation is not yet in the what they call the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, the
Oh,
big book
really?
of diseases. So every now and then when I say I've got chronic suicidal ideation, I get this from a clinician.
Huh.
Yeah, like a dog in a fan. Because it's not in there yet. And they haven't heard of it. So I'm sure it will be
Interesting.
in the next, next couple of editions, but currently it's not in there.
So it's not medically diagnosable. Is that what you're suggesting? It's not. Why is there
Uh,
a term for it then?
yeah, there's a term for it, and there are symptoms, but it's not
Ah,
official. It's not a. I guess it's not an official mental illness unless it's in the book.
I see.
But over time, it's like the term borderline used to be. Borderline as a diagnosis was a dumping ground for clinicians who couldn't figure out what else they had. However, over the decades, they've developed a solid list of symptoms specifically for borderline. So now it is a thing, not just a dumping ground for anybody you can't figure out.
Hmm.
So I think chronic suicidal ideation is kind of the same, in the same vein.
I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to a lot of inspirational people like yourself who, face adversity, face challenges, and then turn it around and are able to help others. And I generally find that meditation is a general practice. I enjoyed your method of espresso and to kind of get you going.
After a 29-minute guided meditation this morning, I got up, we walked the dogs, I did my chores, I crawl back in bed, and I have a thing called a cat napper. It's a guided meditation, takes you down, then brings you back up the other end. You will awaken refreshed.
Mm,
Do it twice a day, generally. On planes, on airport floors, anywhere I happen to be. I try to get that. Usually after a meal is a good time for me to kick back for 29 minutes. And it's
and it
good.
just clears your thought.
Yeah, it's a good way with the cat napper at 29 minutes because he wakes you back up. It's a
I
great way
see.
to manage your meditation slash nap time. You don't just fall in a hole for 3 hours, and it's just enough. It's like remember back in the day with computers, you just unplug them and plug them back in and hope it worked.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
basically what it is. You unplug for 29 minutes, plug it back in.
Hmm.
Lowers blood pressure, cortisol, raises DHEA and oxytocin. So I mean, and some of the world's greats, Einstein, Churchill, John F. Kennedy, were all nappers. I'm thinking,
Einstein as well.
beg pardon, Einstein as well. Yeah,
Einstein.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about writing a
Yes.
book called "Snooze You'll Win."
Hmm. Very good. Tell me what it was like working for Jay Leno for 20 years.
Well, when he was Johnny's permanent guest host is when it started, because
Hmm.
Johnny would pull up on a Friday night, tell his staff, "I'm taking next week off," which meant Monday was Best of Carson rerun,
Right.
but Jay had 4 nights, 18 jokes a night to cobble together practically over the weekend. So he started hiring road comics like me as contractors. So you signed the contractor paperwork, and then I submitted 12 to 24 jokes a day when he needed them. And if he does them, it's on spec. If he does them, then you get paid. And then when he got the job for real, he cut most of the contract labor loose, but he kept some, a couple of us on. And so for the next how many ever years, I pumped in 12 to 24 jokes a day, topical jokes. And he's a really nice guy. One of the other writers, told him that I was in Raleigh in 1995 having a heart surgery, a valve job. So I get back to my room out of ICU. Another comic friend of mine is there. The phone rings. My comic friend picks it up. Hello? Oh, really? Oh, you're really Jay Leno? Yeah, who is it? Who's fucking with me? And Jay goes, hey, no, it's Jay. Oh, shit. Is Frank there? Yeah, hold on. Hey, I heard you had heart surgery. It's a good thing you didn't have it in LA. They'd take that thing out and leave it out. Take a couple of weeks off. Just a really genuinely nice
Yeah.
guy.
I remember I would hear stories from him that he would get jokes faxed into him. I
That
didn't
was
quite
me.
understand how it worked. Yeah, that's very so 18, it was his monologue is 18 jokes every monologue?
Yeah,
It's a
roughly 18
fascinating
jokes
number.
every monologue.
Huh.
And one of the tricks you do, because writing 12, 24 jokes a day, topicals, is difficult.
Yeah.
And you're competing with everybody else who's reading the same newspapers.
Right.
So, but I would always read the red section of the USA Today, the business, or is it the green section? Green section.
I don't remember.
The
Yeah,
business section of the USA Today, because no comics, I swear, ever read that looking for jokes. So
I see.
if you can get a joke that's not, where the premise hadn't been worked over so many times, it's like the one joke on finance, I would get one in. Or I
Huh.
would video record his monologue, see which premises he liked, and then try to write another punchline on that premise because he already likes the premise. We know this. There was a Switzerland. They built a condom factory. You really want to buy a condom from a country that makes cheese with holes in it? So I
Right.
wrote that down and I thought about it. And so he bought this one. Switzerland, they got a condom factory. But the Swiss. It's not just a condom, it's a screwdriver, it's a scissors, it's a.
Right. Spoon. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there was a technique to, you know.
Right, the delivery, yeah. Stock market's down, sounds like Monica Lewinsky, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah. And there's
So
formulas.
right. So you would we as the public would listen to his monologue and get laughs, but you would sit there listening and hoping to hear one of your jokes.
Yes, like the lottery almost. And
Interesting,
what I would
because
do
you
is
weren't warned.
no.
You were
And
not notified.
since we're all working with the same material out of the paper, let's say there
Right,
was a percentage, like 26% of.
right.
Well, I would change it to 24% of. So that way, if he says 24%, I know that's mine, not somebody else with parallel thought. It's a way to tag the joke so you recognize it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And he
Did
never,
that ever come up where you thought it was your joke, but he didn't pay you for it, or they
no,
didn't pay you for it? No.
not once. Every time he did a joke of mine, I got a check. And I had two jokes on his very first show when he took over for Johnny.
Do you remember what they were?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Here's why I did it.
So what year is it? Paint a picture.
Oh God.
Or approximately, it was in the 90s, right?
Yeah, it was in the early
Remem
'90s.
Early 90s.
Yeah, and they did 2 weeks of reruns of Johnny to kind of clear the palate for Jay. And I know comics; they have no work ethic. So I pumped in just dozens and dozens and dozens of jokes during that 2 week period, knowing probably nobody else or very few are doing it. And so anyway, the first one was some guy got killed by bees, stung to death in Texas. Yeah, a guy in Texas stung to death by bees. Turns out they weren't what do they call the deadly bees?
Wasps,
No, the
African hornets.
no, that's the whole new variety.
Right.
Killer bees, they called
Killer
it back then.
bees, yeah.
Turns out they weren't killer bees. Now they were just ordinary honeybees upset over the Rodney King verdict. Killed. And then Dan Quayle in the USA Today, they were talking
Right.
about Murphy
Potato?
Brown, this old
Oh,
show
yeah.
with, and
Yeah, I remember.
she got pregnant on the show supposedly
Yeah,
and had,
yeah.
well, this Dan Quayle said that Murphy Brown having a child out of wedlock mocks the importance of fathers. Where
Remember
would I have been
this.
without my dad? Quayle said. And my punchline was, I guess, Vietnam.
Ah,
Boom.
pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, so
Pretty good.
I
Yeah,
got two.
pretty good.
I got two in one
Yeah.
night, and I did several times where I got two in a night. The trick is you have to write in his voice.
Oh,
When I wrote for Dennis Miller through a friend of mine, his style is entirely different. It's set
right.
up, punchline, metaphor, simile.
Extract, reference.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so Linda Tripp, you remember Linda Tripp, the old Linda Tripp, the one before Nutrisystem. She came out, she's crying. I'm just an ordinary woman, I think.
It's something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
doing my
honey, you're
job
roughly
over and over
two
again.
ordinary women. Yeah, yeah. You, you make Janet Reno look like Xena Warrior Princess. Yeah,
Listen, bub. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You had to
yeah.
write in his, and I wrote for Joan
In its
Rivers
cadence,
as
yeah.
well for a little while. I wrote for Joan Rivers. I was on her daytime talk show once, and then
Joan
I wrote
Rivers,
for her
the
for a
best,
year.
the best. Joan Rivers, yeah. Yeah, I miss her. I got the good opportunity to meet her just incidentally, but, yeah, that's funny with Dennis Miller. I could, yeah, see his Dana Carvey used to mimic him perfectly, but yeah, Joan Rivers, oh my goodness. So great. She had this one joke that I'll just never forget where she said she said Trenton, New Jersey is just like my vagina. Many men go there but never want to come back.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
This is one of a kind, just one of a kind. So
Well,
so Frank, go ahead.
she was a pioneer. I mean, the
Yes.
amazing
Yes.
Mrs. Mizell,
Oh yeah.
fourth season coming up, is sort of Joan's story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jewish family probably
Yeah.
didn't support it. You
Right.
know,
Big show. So uh, comedian, author, speaker, mental health activist, uh, you know, many hats, Frank. I mean, can we pin you down to 1 or 2? Is there one you like doing more than the other? Is it you're also a coach for TEDx, by the way. Uh, you do so many things. How do you approach them all? What do you like doing more?
Before January 1st, 2018,
Hmm.
I had a networking speech. I had a cardiac health speech. I had just plain funny stand up, good, clean, funny stand up for conventions. And I had a suicide prevention speech.
Mm.
And I looked around town at other entrepreneurs who were very successful and asked myself the question. I was on a cruise ship, working a cruise ship at Christmas, and I asked myself, on the elliptical runner, I asked myself a question. Okay, what do they have in common? And I realized the guy who owns a body shop that's the most successful in town, that's all he does. The guy that
Mm.
owns 3 radio stations, that's all he does. And I decided at that moment, okay, I'm going to be a suicide prevention speaker. That's going to be my lane. And I
Mm.
tell my clients, when you chose a lane and choose a lane, you also got to figure out who your ideal clients are. And I thought, well, there's probably a top 10 list of at risk occupations for suicide. And most occupations have associations and they have to have a meeting every year by their bylaws. So I picked 6 of the top 10 at risk occupations for suicide as my ideal clients. That's the only people I market to.
Hmm.
If you go to suicide prevention speakers, plural, dental, I have at least the first 6 organic listings, if not 7, 8, or 9, on page
Wow.
one. That's the benefit of picking a ideal client like that.
Right.
So
Focusing.
I would say, what suicide prevention speaking is my passion and my purpose. Because I'm saving lives, I would assume, from
Small.
all indications. And
Yeah.
somebody said, "How do you pick suicide as a topic?" Well, you know what? The topic picked me.
Mm.
And my best speakers, my best TEDx students, are ones for whom it's organic. It's something in them, whether it's mental or physical. It's something that they eat, sleep, breathe, go to bed thinking about, wake up thinking about. I have one with narcolepsy. She's got a foundation for narcolepsy. She's got a book on narcolepsy. I mean, it really wasn't a tough call to pick what we're going to pitch for her TEDx.
Mm.
And, they got a woman that had cancer and survived. And so that's obviously, occasionally I'll turn down somebody for TEDx coaching. Nice young woman called me. She goes, "Can you help me get a TEDx on customer service?" I said, "Are you really passionate?" I said, "No, I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't make that sing. I can't, make anybody." Because one of the questions they ask you on the application oftentimes, your idea, title, subtitle, and then why are you the person who should deliver this? And the next question
Mm.
often is, why would anybody care? Well, that's where the customer service thing breaks down for me because I don't, I said, now if you came to me and said, "Frank, I want to do a TEDx talk on the power of empathy in customer service." Okay,
Ah.
now we're talking. So yeah, my favorite clients are the ones for whom it's just, I've got a client, she's never even given a paid speech, and she got a TEDx in part because she came within close enough to slitting her own throat with a kitchen knife. She remembers
Mm.
what the cold steel in her throat felt like. I mean, the story, and so her backstory is compelling. And she wrote a book called, her name is Olivia, shortened to Live, and she wrote a book called Live to Tell about
Mm.
why she didn't and how things have gone since then. So yeah, if it's in you, then I tell people, look, if I came over to your house, you're asleep. I'll wake you from a sound sleep, and I go, "Give me 15 minutes on anything," and you start talking, whatever comes out of your mouth, chances are is your passion. So
So I always bring up discipline. So, it's kind of the theme. It is the theme of my podcast. So I lost a bunch of weight, had some tragedy in my life, dealt with it how I feel through discipline. People ask me, "How'd you lose 130 pounds?"
whoa,
Like yeah, I used to be 340 pounds on the
dear
average.
God,
That was,
man.
yeah. So how did you lose it? Like they want some secret bullet. And I just say, well, it's just discipline. Some things happened and I just focused and some other things. No, I'm certainly not a professional at it. There's other areas that I lack discipline. So I'm asking you, Frank King, do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
I don't know. You tell me.
Wow. Very nice.
Yeah, at 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, some would call it discipline, some would call it OCD.
Mm.
So yeah, I
By
had
the way,
that
that was a picture for those listening. It was a picture of you with your shirt off. You work out very very much,
at my second bodybuilding contest.
and your bodybuilding contest.
Yeah,
Yes, very good. Yeah.
where I was terrified because I'm wearing my
Mm.
underwear on stage in front of 200 people, uh, and wearing all I was wearing is bikini panties and a fake tan,
Nice.
and I'm yeah,
And a smile.
and a smile, yeah, and I can't say anything, which is my strong
Right.
suit.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I believe the
Discipline.
discipline. A friend of mine, Mark LeBlanc, said this, and I think it's true. Commitment's good. Consistency gets results.
Mm.
I don't lift a lot of weight, but I lift weights a lot.
Hmm.
And so, and in part because of my cardio, I have had 2 valve jobs, a double bypass, a heart attack, another story, and 3 stents. And so I was in the gym anyway for my heart, for the cardio. And I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to be a bodybuilder. I'm 60. I bet you everybody else has given up, which is pretty much the case. And if I just increase the intensity and maybe bump the weights up and so forth, and figure out a way to diet. So I first got on the keto diet January 1st, 2018. It was a big day for me. I got on the
Mm.
keto diet. And then in that August, I discovered intermittent fasting, which is a great combination. So I'm on the keto diet and I eat 1 meal a day, every day. And that's the, commitment's good, but consistency.
Mm.
And so that's why my body fat's somewhere around 6 to 8% still in
Wow.
between contests. And but again, it's that, I guess, discipline. Discipline sounds so difficult. I think it scares
It
people.
does.
Discipline.
Yeah.
But you lost 130 pounds. I mean, that takes discipline. Yes, commitment,
Yeah.
consistency.
There's there's self-discipline. I do get a decent amount of pushback, Frank, from people. It's like, I'd rather use compassion than discipline, and or I'd rather use this than that. And I say, well, even using compassion, don't you have to invoke some kind of self-discipline? Isn't there some factor, be it very small or large? But it's my theme. I use it, and I like to ask people how they use it, if they do it all, and perhaps others can learn from that as well.
Well,
When you approach, go ahead,
well, and
please.
one of the benefits of the bodybuilding is when I do my mental health talks, I say, look, as part of a self care plan, I think you should have a hobby or an avocation that is completely
Mm,
different from what you do for a living.
good
And
idea.
so, I make my living running my mouth. I could go in the gym and never speak to a soul, compete and
Mm,
never say a word. So it's just completely different. That's
hmm,
why that's another reason to it gives me an outlet where I can see the results in the mirror. So I can achieve, I can get rewarded. I want to go pro by this time next year, be a professional
wow,
bodybuilder at 66. So I've got a goal.
wow.
So yeah, I think it's important. Those things are important as well for self care. Is have to do something outside your job so you can where you can achieve and gain whatever.
Yeah, yeah. To if you do the same thing all the time, you're going to burn yourself out. I like to golf. I get on that course. I walk. I see the grass. It's opened up. I don't think about anything else. It's wonderful. So when you approach suicide prevention, do you approach it in a more scientifically or art? What is it to you? Is it more art than science? How do you approach it, and how do you help others with
It's a
your approach?
combination of art and science. When I
Mm,
decided I was going to be a suicide prevention speaker, when I did my first TEDx in 2014, and I came out on stage at age 52 as depressed and suicidal, nobody knew. My wife, my family,
mm,
my friends. But I had to rebrand from a comedian because everybody thought of me decades as a comic, funny guy. As a friend of mine said, you had to rebrand from a funny speaker to a speaker who's simply funny.
mm.
And what's the difference? About $2,500 a night plus travel. Uh, but I thought I've got to convince meeting planners and speakers bureaus that I can do something serious. And I thought, oh, I can do something deadly serious. So it was very specific. I was very, focused as to what to come out with on that talk because that was going to be beginning of my rebranding. And it pretty much worked. When I sent those people who booked me as a comic before, sent them a TEDx, they're like, oh my God. So it's so then I took some training took 2 courses in suicide prevention. One's called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. One's called Working Minds. Suicide prevention is a workplace health and safety issue. I'm getting ready November 29, 30, and December 1 to take a course, train the trainer for mental health first aid. If you want to take a 101 class on mental health, go to mentalhealthfirstaid.org,
Hmm.
mentalhealthfirstaid.org. And most of the classes cost anywhere from $5 to $25, 8-hour class. You get a
Wow.
binder with all the information in it. And it's just a great, especially if you have someone in your family who's struggling. And then on the 7th and 8th of December, the local mental health outfit is offering something called Assist Training, ASIST. I wish I knew what that meant, but I know it's suicide prevention, so I signed up. It's free. I
Hmm.
continue to get the scholarship behind what I'm saying. So it's not just my personal story. It's not just tips and tricks I've heard. There are several curriculum that I cherry pick from to do my. This friend of mine says I don't, read it like it's in a book. I paraphrase it. I put it in my own words,
Mm.
which as a comic and a speaker, it makes it a little more interesting than if I was just, spitting back what was in
Reading
the
a script.
text.
It troubles me to think that, generations ago that, before we talked about this, about how many lives we could have saved if there was more people like yourself bringing awareness, if there was more education, as you just talked about, there's more people coming out. It's great that it's happening now. And I thank you for it. Frank, thanks so much for your time today. So how can we get in touch with you? You've got so many different avenues.
Yeah,
Talk to me about
yeah.
those who's listening or watching. How can we get in touch with you?
Well, I'm in the federal witness relocation program, so
Well, that's troubling. That's going to
yes.
be tough.
No, if you'd like to read the first book in my men's mental health series, and by the way, more women buy it than men because I suspect they have
Mm,
a man in their life they can't figure out how to help. If you go to thementalhealthcomedian.com or my phone number's there, my email's there. I put my phone number, my cell up on the screen every keynote I give, and I say, look, if you're suicidal, call the lifeline. If you're just having a
wow.
bad day, call a crazy person. Here's my cell. And
Mm,
people call or text. Um, if you want TEDx coaching, a lot of people have that on their bucket list.
mm,
It's yourtedxcoach.com. Yourtedxcoach.com. The freebie there is a PDF of the 6 things you can do to kill your chances of landing a TEDx talk.
mm.
People tell you all the time what you need to do, but what I'm trying to impress upon them is there are certain deal killers that will get you thrown in the no pile immediately. So let's avoid those potholes on your way to getting one.
Very good. Very good. And then your TEDx actual videos are up and they're great. They're really, really, really good. And you're an excellent speaker. And I kind of watched you, 2016 to 20, as the years went on. You got better. Not that you were bad in the beginning, but you got better and you're just a little bit more comfortable. And
Yep.
it was tremendous. Frank King, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody who's listening or watching will help from this and reach out if they need and want help.
Yes, and if they, do put my phone number in the show notes, and they're welcome to call me. Because I'm not gonna, I don't judge. I hear the same music. I understand what you're going through. As a friend of mine says,
Mm,
I'm just gonna, help you wade through whatever BS you've co-signed on.
mm.
So,
Very good. Frank, thanks so much. You have a great day. Thank you so much for your time.
thanks, Joe.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. It's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.